Hi guys, this is our reptile behavior and reproduction video. By the end of the video you should be able to explain the function of the amniotic egg and all the parts, all the extra embryonic membranes. Describe the different characteristics of reptile mating and reproduction. Differentiate, so tell the differences between vivipary and ovipary. Explain parthenogenesis and why it happens in some reptiles. And discuss the process of incubation, hatching, parental care, and development in reptiles. So that should guide you. So the amniotic egg is first seen in reptiles. We've talked about this a little bit before, and it's gives reptiles an adaptive advantage because it allows them to survive and reproduce on land. And in reptiles, the shell of the amniotic egg is generally leathery. Alligators and crocodiles have more of a hard shell, though. So the four extra embryonic membranes that you should be familiar with, the chorion, sorry it's not listed there on the left, that is where gas exchange happens. You can see it in the figure over here. The amnion is fluid filled. That's the provides protection, kind of like the amniotic fluid in mammals. The yolk sac contains the yolk, which is nutrition for the developing embryo, and the allantois is where respiration happens, and it also is a place to collect waste. So reptile reproduction, the timing of it is variable, and it depends on both temperature and photoperiod. Photoperiod is actually less important, so it depends more on the temperature, because those reptiles, remember, are ectothermic, and most of them are poikilothermic, so their temperature is going to change, and it needs to be high enough that it can support reproduction. So most reptiles will breed about a month or two after they come out of hibernation, and usually they lay just one clutch of eggs. Both smell and vision come into play with reptile mate selection, and it depends on species which one is used more or less. Things like sea turtles aren't going to use smell as much as terrestrial reptiles would. A lot of reptile species secrete pheromones, so chemical signals to attract mates. Some examples are like musk turtles, where you can really kind of smell that pheromone they use. Others use vision and certain displays, things like the anole's throat fan. It's also called a dewlap, and the color of that is shown in this here. That's to kind of attract mates. Some turtles do this really funny head bobbing thing to attract their mate, and a lot of them will use a combination of smell and sight cues. In a lot of reptiles there's multiple matings, and so the point of that is to increase genetic diversity. So sometimes a clutch of eggs, there'll be multiple fathers in that clutch of eggs, so multiple matings occurred, and sperm from different males was successful. Now sometimes there's competition where there's multiple matings, and so there's sperm from multiple males inside the female, and the female can tell or choose the quote-unquote best male sperm, and so definitely a lot of times the females can choose against those that are genetically related to herself, which is good because that prevents inbreeding, but also sometimes can choose based on other things too. So that's kind of a neat thing. This is on the left is a water snake, and on the right this is a breeding ball. You see those in garter snakes a lot. So ovipary and vivipary are both seen in reptiles. Ovipary is when eggs are laid, vivipary is giving live birth. Most reptiles lay eggs, so they're oviparous. The ones that give live birth, Viperidae, so those are the pit vipers, remember? So things like the timber rattlesnake, they always give live birth. Some skinks give live birth, and then garter snakes and ribbon snakes, the genus Thamnophis, they give live birth. There are some snakes that do parthenogenesis, which is a type of asexual reproduction. It's when an individual develops from an unfertilized egg. And so there's no male involved. And there's some species that only have females in the whole species, and they're able to reproduce by parthenogenesis. And that's most common in lizards. There are some accounts of what's called facultative parthenogenesis, when it's only done, like, if that's the only way to reproduce, when need be. Some species have shown that they are capable of doing this, even though it's not the norm. And some examples of that are timber rattlesnake and garter snake. And there were situations where there was a female only in the presence of other females for a certain amount of time. I think this is usually in captivity, so they know that that female was never in contact with a male snake, but yet she gave birth. Or, yeah, I guess if it was timber rattlesnake and garter snake, it was that she gave live birth. And so, back to parthenogenesis real quick, that adaptation is useful where, if a species is in a situation where reproduction might not happen, it's kind of a last-ditch effort. Sexual reproduction is always better because it increases genetic diversity, but passing on the genes, period, is what's important to species, and so it's kind of a backup plan, I guess. It's a pretty neat adaptation. So those reptiles that do lay eggs, a lot of them keep the eggs inside their body until about halfway through development. And it's kind of a trade-off kind of thing. Retaining eggs inside the body makes the mom heavier. It takes more energy from the mom to maintain them, and also it makes her slower to get away from predators, but it's protecting the eggs more. So it's a trade-off, and different species will lay their eggs at different times, weighing those trade-offs. And then embryonic development. For most turtles, lizards, and snakes, it's somewhere between 5 weeks to 16 weeks. Excuse me, that's between the time when the egg's laid and when it hatches. In many species, the sex
while many
of
lizards
the
and snakes will care for their eggs,
is determined by the
some
incubation
snakes will wrap
temperature
themselves
in the
around
middle
their
third of
eggs and
incubation.
incubate them.
But what's interesting
Before
is
they
different
hatch,
species that
very
goes different
few
ways. So with some,
reptiles will care
if
for
it's a
their
higher
young.
temperature,
And it'll be
so
female,
reptiles are born
lower temperature male,
just
and
as with
miniature
other species,
adults,
it's so they're
reversed.
capable of feeding, moving,
The
defending
incubation
themselves.
temperature can
The only
also
thing
have
they're not really
long-term
capable
effects
of when they're born
on
is
things like
reproduction.
survival, growth rate,
And
even
reproduction
behavior
is
of the
determined
offspring.
in most cases by size, not
and then
by
to get
age.
out of the
so it doesn't
shell,
matter how old they
there's
are.
a
It
matters
thing on
how big
almost
they
all
are,
reptiles called
whether
a
they're ready to
caruncle egg
reproduce or
tooth,
not.
and
so
it is used to
that
crack the
timeline
shell.
is
Different
so
for
they can
different
get out,
species, and even
and it's
different
reabsorbed
populations
after
and
birth.
different
And
years.
you can see
that
that
kind
in
of thing.
this.
So let's go back and make sure that you have all of these bullets covered. Make sure you're familiar with the amniotic egg and its parts, the different characteristics of reptile mating reproduction, difference between vivipary and ovipary, understanding parthenogenesis, and then the process of incubation, hatching, parental care, and development. So I'm going to leave you with a joke. What do turtles use to call their mom? This one's pretty easy. I think that you should be able to get it. Think for a minute. A shell phone. Because turtles have shells, you know? You get it? Okay. Have a great night.